Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be at this time. My name is Isaac Minde, Associate Director, Alliance for African Partnership. On behalf of the Alliance for African Partnership and Makerere University, who are co-hosting this dialogue, I would like to welcome you all to this very exciting dialogue, which is on insects for food and feed in Africa. The motivation behind this dialogue is based on several facts, the key one being that the global human population growth rate and consequent food demand are, to say the least, alarming. We have over 80 million people being added to this planet every year. It is therefore critical that we design and implement innovative policies and investments that will put more food on the table. And today, the discussion will be through the insects pathway. This dialogue has assembled a team of well-informed experts who have been in this space for several years, who will be sharing with us some of their practical experiences in the field and will be providing us with out-of-the-box, truly sustainable, economically viable, socially acceptable, and environmentally friendly solutions via insects aimed at contributing towards addressing the food demand gap. So without further ado, it is now my pleasure and privilege to introduce our moderator today, Dr. Dorothy Nakimbugwe, Associate Professor, Department of Food Science and Nutrition and Bioengineering, Makerere University, Kampala, Uganda. Welcome, Dorothy.
Thank you very much, Isaac. Ladies and gentlemen, good day, wherever you're part of this very topical discussion on insects for food and feed in Africa. I am happy to be your moderator, and I would like to make the following few remarks. Insects already play an important role in African food systems and are predicted to do so even more going forward. This public dialogue on the topic of insects for food and feed is timely for many reasons, including the following. One, all forms of malnutrition are unacceptably high in Africa and other developing nations. Second, insects are nutritious and supplement the diets of approximately 2 billion people and have always been an important part of African diets. Also, climate change and its mitigation is a global concern. The COP26 just concluded in Glasgow, Scotland, and discussions were far from easy. Insects are recognized for their potential to contribute to reduced carbon emissions and consequently climate change mitigation. Insects are also key players in the bioeconomy or circular economy, for which Africa is recognized to have the greatest potential. Insects also featured prominently at the second East African Bioeconomy Conference 2021 that was held in Nairobi last week. Finally, insects do not only contribute to healthy diets in Africa, but also to livelihoods. On a light note, it is the grasshopper season in Uganda. We get 2 seasons each year. And for those of you who don't know, the long-horned grasshopper, Rusporia differens seville, is a delicacy in Uganda. It mostly swarms and is harvested during the night. Now, there is a few concerns this season. One, increasingly, the grasshoppers don't swarm when expected and in the quantities that are expected. Secondly, we have a COVID-19 related night curfew countrywide that is worrying the harvesters, traders, and consumers. And there's a lot of opinions being exchanged in the media about this, some jokes, some very unserious suggestions. So anyway, the point being that insects are important. I'm sure there are other stories like those or even more compelling from other African nations. So it is against that background that I'm very pleased to introduce to you a panel of world-class experts in the insects for food and feed space to interact with you our very wide and valid, also well-informed audience from all over the world on this important topic. So we believe by the end of this discussion, we will be more aware of the state of knowledge in this space. But also have this dialogue and to discuss more a diversity of topics around this subject. So without much more further ado, let me briefly introduce our first speaker, just to say that in the conference pack that you have the extended biographies of these speakers. So I will keep it very brief here. First up is Deborah Amren, who is from the Department of Livestock and Industrial Resources Management at Makerere University. She's going to talk to us about the current state of knowledge on the insects for food and feed space in Africa and globally. Deborah, you're welcome. Please take the floor. Thank you.
Share the current knowledge about the insect technologies in Africa. So I'd request Justin, share. So my task in this panel is to share about the current status of insect knowledge and probably set a pace for dialogue for the whole team. I would like to first introduce the team to already know knowledge about Africa. Africa is strategically positioned to address some of its challenges through the insect technology because it's an acutely starving continent that needs food, with even a growing population that cannot meet the current production challenges. Whereas we are at the moment at 1.3 billion people, that's the estimated population by 2020, it's expected that by 2050, we shall be around 2.53 billion. Characteristically, we are poor people, okay, not in terms of resources, but by functions and all factor access to how to exploit those resources. You find that we host half of the global poor. Also, it's the same continent that has malnourished children. 30% of African children are reported to be stunted, yet we are endowed with all these insects that have been profiled to have high nutrient components. The youth unemployment is a big factor. Africa is a young continent, for those who need to know, and majority of these people are unemployed and yearning for employment opportunities. So having alternatives like insects that are upcoming and easy to set up is an opportunity for the poor, especially the youth and the women. So how well strategically placed is Africa to tap into this resource? Next slide, Christine. Already, there is documented evidence that, and a lot of scientific literature, that insect consumption is part of our culture. And without even following or saying about the scientific evidence, I'm an Itesot from an agro-pastoral community. We grew up eating termites, we grew up eating white ants. So part of that culture is now unfortunately becoming less popular among the young generation that are in peri-urban environment, as documented in certain literature. Africa is a continent that over 470 species of insects are consumed. If you take an example of South Africa alone, it's documented that around 50 edible insects are consumed. And there's still more growing body of literature. So that means that insects are well positioned to address the SDG 1 and 2 of no poverty and hunger. When you come to the income generation, taking an example from an entrepreneur myself of BSF, it was one of the easy entry points, because when you deal with a poor community, they're always looking for innovations that are low cost, low input, and low startup. And insects provide that opportunity for this poor community. There is the study by Vanel et al. They modeled the potential of BSF alone within the continent, and they estimated that the annual production of protein alone from the black soldier fly larvae, one insect like this, would be able to generate around US dollars 2.6 billion for the continent from protein, and from fertilizer around 19.4 billion. Creating an estimate of 15 million jobs. Okay, this is just a modeled estimate, not facts, because we have, within the same continent, we are facing, of course, a challenge that there is limited information on exact mass volumes of the products of insects that are generated. So this gives opportunity that these insects can give decent employment and also help balance the equity in distribution of these decent jobs. The environmental benefits are well known, because we realize, you all know that the average acreage for a smallholder farmer is around 3 acres, and most households within my community, some own less than 10 acres. They are always making decisions on what to place on those small acres of land. So having a technology that consumes less land, that takes less water requirements, and also helps you recycle organic waste is well suited for this continent. Again, it was estimated from that same study that BSF alone, that is rearing maggots from the black soldier fly larvae, could help reduce carbon dioxide emissions by 86 million tons. So clearly, there is a significant potential for insects, for food and feed within the African continent. The question now we remain asking ourselves is, how well prepared are Africans, and what is it that the scientists that have done so far significant volume of work have contributed to? And that brings us to the next discussion in this section of my presentation. Within the continent, at least there have been significant, efforts by scientists to document the production. There's a growing body of knowledge over the years for BSF, for the production of insects. So you find that they have tried to document the rearing practices, moving communities from wild captures. Of course, it has been very difficult for certain insect communities. When we talk about insects, there are different types of insects. What is really commonly consumed at the moment in the continent is the grasshoppers, the caterpillars, the Mopanel worms from South Africa, and there are also other crickets. And then for animal feeds, they are mainly, I think, the black soldier fly larvae is at its advanced stages. So there is scientific literature where people are trying to optimize rearing conditions for these insects, be it in the lab or in the small scale, small, medium scale. I know for universities like Makerere and Center for Insect Research, ISIPE, they have tried to put up models there for rearing at the backyard scale and small scale. What is limited in that area is that some of these conditions are well regulated and laboratory based. Some farmers are finding it very difficult to adopt and adjust them to their local conditions, and that explains a lot of exit rate among the farmers. There is also a significant body of knowledge on nutritional profiles, and there are still more nutrition profiles of edible insects being captured within the continent and even in the globe. However, there are gaps in areas of food safety for this. And then, because of this, at least preliminary studies in production, there is a growing body of investments. For example, in East Africa alone, it's documented that there are over 1,000 black soldier fly larvae farms. And that's a contribution of research from scientists from the region of Africa, that is Central, West Africa, and East Africa. When you come to post-harvest technology, at least there are again some studies in the continent in post-harvest processing methods, effect of processing methods on nutrition and microbes. However, there's still more that is needed to be done to assess this, especially on the risks that the microbes might carry to either the animal or the human in consumption. There have been at least efforts to try and develop products, value-added products from insects as additives, like making cakes. I know of a study from colleagues from Zimbabwe where they have used termites to make millet porridge. And also from Makerere University, a lot of products have been developed from the Food Science and Technology Laboratory to produce cakes and a lot of local chapatis while mixing insect flour in it. Whereas this increases acceptability, there are still issues of allergies, issues of taste, smell, when insects are added as ingredients in some of these products. So some of these areas need to be addressed through science and combined knowledge with the local communities to see how it fits their needs. Of course, the story for the Western world is completely different from what is in the African continent. In the aspect of food safety and legislation, whereas most African countries that are registered under Codex, they have the food and nutrition policy, many of them don't have like specific food safety policies that address especially insects as that feed. And there's a very comprehensive review by Dr. Nashimbigwe and team and other scientists. Legislation in the EU has already gone ahead to accept insect ingredients in some of the animal feeds. Within Uganda and Kenya, at least there has been progress to develop standards for dry insect material in animal feeds. In other countries, I think either they are still in the process of producing those standards or regulations. There are still not public documents in that regard. We also see a lot of gaps, information gaps in the profitability and cost benefit. I can give an example as a BSF farmer. We have a training facility. We are receiving on average around 7 calls of farmers wanting to start up, and there are those that initially started up the rearing of the enterprises. But the key challenge they face is, what are the costs? What are the returns to investment? How will my chicken perform? What will happen to my pig? Which kind of waste? And we all know, according to the optimized mass rearing protocols, that some of these components, the nutrients we speak about that are in the insect, they vary by the type of organic matter that is used to raise the insect. So as I conclude my section of presentation, there are some observations that I see as a way or areas that maybe this discussion tonight should look into in terms of the exploitation of the insect resource within the African continent. First of all, there is need for more information on what are the costs and the profitability, because if you're going to convince small-scale farmers, backyard farmers to set up these, what are they looking up to? Because farmers are continuously adjusting their workloads based on what they can benefit in terms of revenues and time allocation, return to time. Extension knowledge information, yes, we have some resources that are developed and are disjointed out there in terms of package extension. But we have realized that every community needs tailor-made and practical information for their local situations. How best can we help them to develop this? And then
Deborah,
there is need.
Deborah, if you could please wrap it up quickly. Thank you.
Yes. Studies on the profiles of insect-based needs and risk-based analysis for safety of these, especially for heavy metals. And then institutionalized courses that focus on productive insect training so that there is more skilled labor out there and retooling of extension travel. So I would like to thank Alliance for African Partnership and Makerere University for this opportunity, especially the teammates in my lab. And I submit my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deborah, from that academic but also practitioner point of view. Ladies and gentlemen, we will have a question and answer session at the end of all the presentations. So we're not going to discuss now. Please keep your questions and comments coming in the chat. We are compiling those for discussion. Next up, I would like to introduce Jen Peschel from the Department of Entomology at Michigan State University to take us through future opportunities towards efforts aimed at enhancing the contribution and closing gaps in the industry. Take the floor.
Thank you for that introduction. So first, I would like to say thank you for the opportunity to speak on this panel today. I see a lot of familiar faces, and I really feel privileged to be part of this opportunity. So one of the things that we know is that the global population is expected to reach almost 9 billion people by 2050. That means that food production must also increase by almost 60% to meet the demands of all of these new individuals. However, increasing these agricultural commodities to meet the demand for global food production exacerbates several issues of human concern. For example, there is concern about food production and a shortage in available protein while the continued population growth is happening, and there are lots of different factors that can be contributing to these limited amounts of protein production. And we need to be able to feed all of the different animals. I'm interested in feeding livestock, particularly, and also aquaculture. And so really understanding all of these different mitigation factors to increase the feed and food demand is something of great importance. There are lots of concern about global food production, and these social and economic and natural resource limitations eventually manifest into amplified social pressures. We see increased rates of disease, we see increased demand for land and water resources, as well as the lack of agricultural entrepreneurship, which only further weakens not only the local African economies, but also the global economy. What this results in is a need to minimize the anthropogenic effects that we typically see through expansion of urbanization, through monocrops, and also we're starting to see more extreme climate conditions due to climate change. And all of this has a negative impact on the current agricultural practices. So we need to have an increase, or we need to have modified agricultural practices that can overcome these challenges. And so one of the approaches for this is to actually use insects. And Deborah, she highlighted a lot of the information about insects and how they're currently used, and a lot of the factors that go into insects as feed. But one of the things that I want to focus on is the black soldier fly. And black soldier flies are a very specific type of insect that are used to rear, they can process a lot of food waste and a lot of organic material waste. And you can use all of that in order to create an alternative protein for feed. A lot of the times it's used for poultry, aquaculture, swine facilities. Those are kind of the primary targets of feed production using these black soldier flies. Something that's unique about this particular insects, because there are over 5 billion species of insects in the world. A lot of those are consumed from individuals, and they can be consumed, but black soldier fly is unique in its properties and its life history traits that allow it to be such a great target for creating positive protein production while also reducing organic waste. As you can see in this diagram, the black soldier flies as adults, they don't feed, so they're not pests. They have vestigial mouth parts, and that means that they don't feed as adults, so they're not going to be a damage to crops. And what's interesting about their larvae is they can really develop on any decomposing organic material. even things that are very microbial laden and can be not seen as a resource that can be useful, they can turn that waste into something that's incredibly productive. And there are many, many companies that exist all over the world that are using black soldier flies in different ways. One, they're using them to create meal so they can grind them up. You can actually feed the larvae whole to your desired livestock of choice. You can create bio oils, and the resulting waste can also be a value-added product, and it can be something that can help to increase soil health. So it has this very nice circular economy, and it can be really beneficial. It's from a small backyard scale farmer all the way up to large commercial productions. And so insects as feed in general, these are going to be things that are going to be sustainable, they're socially friendly, they're economically viable, and they're also culturally acceptable. So I really think that the use of insects as feed is going to be something that's going to be tremendous in the future. And a lot of the framework that's been building for the past couple of years is seeing this rolling momentum occur and seeing increased opportunities and funding. So with that being said, there are lots of different opportunities for research and development, for scaling up. That's a really big question that's happening right now in the insects as feed sector. We want to ensure that health and safety of the products that are being produced by using black soldier flies in particular is safe and is hygienic for all of the animals and for all of the humans, the individuals that are working on this particular insect system. And something that I saw mentioned also in the chat earlier is that consumer awareness and acceptance. And also Deborah mentioned this earlier about how there's been a reduced amount of interest in individuals eating insects per se, but in Western cultures, we're also seeing an increase in interest. So there's this interesting balance that's occurring. And also the one thing that I want to talk about too is that as we move forward with different funding opportunities, I am an academician. I think about research. I think about my fellow university colleagues. And what we really need to do is expand our base and think about those individuals who work outside of the academic sector, working with industry, working with private industries, working with governments, working with policymakers, because eventually they're going to have one of the final says in whether or not these technologies are supported and allowed through the governments. Also, NGOs and donors are a huge factor in moving this technology forward and expanding our knowledge base on how insects can be used as feed. One of the things that I want to follow up with or finally go over is that the USAID, USDA, they have a request for information. And there's a lot of information that's on the screen, but this came out actually last week, and it's really exciting to see because this means that there's a lot of interest, at least from the US government, again, about how these insects can be used as an alternative protein production at a large scale. So my call to everybody who's participating in this particular panel, and please distribute this information with your colleagues as well, is that this request of information for global insect production, it's going to allow stakeholders and interested parties to provide information and recommendations regarding global production of insects for food, feed, and/or waste management. So it covers all of those highlights that I've already discussed. It will also explore how USAID and USDA can best lead the support of insect production activities in the future. I consider this to be a global problem and not an only US specific problem. So please feel free to contribute your ideas, and it will help the US government understand the potential challenges, benefits, environmental impacts, and inclusive development considerations of insect production. Again, being based in the US, I have excellent colleagues, and many of them are panelists here today, so it's great to see everybody. But also getting your input is going to be very critical about how these insects can really work on the ground in order to increase this protein production. So my final call is that there's the website that's listed on the screen. The deadline for this is December 22nd of this year at 5 p.m. Eastern time. It is actually quite a lengthy document. If you've never worked with USAID before, they like a lot of details and they like a lot of information, which is great. And so it's going to take a little bit of time perhaps for you to develop your response. So I would highly recommend working on this early and submitting any type of response to really have the positive feedback to demonstrate that global insect production is key to our future. And so with that, I just want to say thank you again for the panelists. Thank you for all of your expert opinions, and thank you for the organizers. And if you have any other questions that you think about later on, please feel free to contact me. I've listed my email here below or on the screen. And so with that, I will pass it back over to Dorothy. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jane, for that really informative discussion, also highlighting the available opportunities. I think that that is partly also what we really need for the people that are participating in this. Thank you very much. Once again, we're going to move on swiftly to the next speaker. I would like to introduce Robert Mussondire from the School of Agricultural Sciences and Technology, Chinhoyi University of Technology in Zimbabwe, to share some of the challenges that they have run into in the production and management, processing, conservation, and food safety, some of the things that also Jen has mentioned. Robert, please take the floor. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And it is my pleasure to present to you some of the experiences we've had in Zimbabwe and also parts of Southern Africa. I need to share my screen. Okay, thank you very much. Once again, I will share with you the reflections on the production management, successes, challenges, and the way ahead regarding insects for food and feed in Africa. My focus is on Zimbabwe and other parts of Southern Africa. Just starting by insects as food, I must say, the situation on the ground is that the majority of insects on this part of the world are still harvested from the wild. There are notable examples: the Mopanel Worms, has a lot of places in Southern Africa, Locust, termites, as well as wild crickets. However, there are already some initiatives to start to breed some insects in captive rearing schemes. I can mention here the crickets, which are easier than the other species that are currently being harvested from the wild. So, however, there's been a general slow pace in adopting the actual insect farming. And these are some of the contributory factors that is leading to this low uptake of insect farming per se. So some of these factors are opportunistic and economic. And I need to highlight that already just one insect, the Mopanel Worms, which are being harvested from the wild, it is attracting a regional trade of between 27.5 million to 41 million US dollars per year. This is Botswana, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. And kind of the local players are still comfortable harvesting and collecting from the wild. However, I must say, going forward, there are indications that these wild populations are going to dwindle due to many factors, which still would encourage us to really invest in insect farming. An additional factor here is that there are still options for long-term storage of some of these insects, which most participants, the participants in these value chains, they are still dodging the issues of seasonality by employing the long-term post-harvest practice. But we are seeing some shift in terms of moving towards a captive rearing of insects. Some of the challenges that I want to highlight, which is also leading to this scenario, is that there are still technical challenges regarding a captive production of these, some of these popular insects. The technologies are not still available for us to farm Mopanel Worms, locusts, and termites. And where domestication has been done, the returns from these endeavors are still very low. So we really need breakthroughs in terms of technologies that can assist us in farming these insects to the same scale as the wild collections are provided. There are also issues to do with social factors, the social norms and cultural beliefs, we still need to work on that to allow the local participants to believe that insects can be farmed, not only crops. However, these are some of the strategies we have been working on here in Zimbabwe and in related in neighboring countries. We have seen that if we create a big demand for insects and the products, there's gonna be a shift towards the supply side is also going to be stimulated. These are some of the things we have done. We have endeavored on making new products. And it's a program we have started at Chinhoyi University of Technology. We have partnered with the hospitality experts to actually try to include insect ingredients in innovative food products, and in the way to create a very good tasty products, visually appealing and cool products that even the younger generation could embrace. So we have done a little bit of some work where we produced cookbooks, and we have 2 cookbooks, one in English and one in French. And I must say, this has had a very big impact. And I want to acknowledge the financial contributions that were provided by the Agri4Say 2030 program funded by SIDA. Using this approach, we were able to attract new insect consumers. And as we speak, we are having a lot of local restaurants that are actually asking for more information and even trying to develop pricing models that they can use in their restaurants. And gradually the demand for insects is actually going up nationally. Another strategy we have done is to actually improve the publicity of insect consumption. We have undertaken a national TV broadcasting cook show where we actually publicize these recipes that we developed. And I must say this has had a very big impact. It was free of charge. Viewers who were able to watch this show, they are actually calling to ask for more information. They are excited. And this is something that is growing very fast in the food market in Zimbabwe. Just going a bit forward regarding the organization of this food insects for food industry in Zimbabwe, what we have also said is we need to improve the marketing. Although we still harvest from the wild, we want to gradually integrate insect farming by still referring back to wild collections, developing products, and then moving forward, slowly injecting the concepts of insect farming into the whole process. So we have said, let's also improve the way insects are being marketed. And we have targeted women and youths. Women are very good in initiating things, I must say. And this has had a very positive impact in terms of development of insects as food. What is happening in that space is that we're developing digital apps where we are actually trying to use the models of aggregation, organized logistics, markets, so that consumers and traders, they will find a ready place to trade in insects so that insects are available on the market at the right price. So we are developing an app called eMadora. Madora is the local name for the Mopanel Worms. So we're gonna develop a digital app that is going to assist in the marketing of these insects. We have also said some consumers don't believe in eating whole insects. So we have also invested a little bit on processing the insects into powders. And this is something that is also making an impact. It augurs well with the formulation of new products that I have highlighted. At national level, our government of Zimbabwe has even also weighed in to actually partner with the African Development Bank, and they've established a canning factory in Zimbabwe in regions where most of these insects are produced. So this is as far as the edible insects for food space is concerned. Let me divert a little bit and talk about insects as feed. And this is an area we have also been working on for the past 2 years, and our target has been the black soldier fly. And here, our main entry point is we have observed that most of our farmers have shifted their production into small livestock, chicken, fish, and the pain that they have at the moment is the cost of feed, which is contributing to 70% of the production. So we have targeted this particular sector, and then we decided to provide solutions to this pain that the farmers are getting. So some of the challenges, despite the interest that the farmers are getting, is the technical know-how for production of black soldier fly is still very low. They see on YouTube, but practically this sometimes, as Deborah and Jane has said, these don't apply to the local circumstances. So this is an area that has been a challenge. Then also when we talk about starter colonies, farmers had challenges accessing this, and then issues to do with financial viability amongst others. So these are some of the challenges that our farmers have been expecting. So what we have done, we have used the following strategies. The first one was to establish a strong institutional partnerships. And I want to mention one particular one, which is the Zimbabwe Livelihoods and Food Security Program, which was a program funded by DFID from the UK. This was a game changer in our strategy. They had all the infrastructure, they had access to farmers, lead farmers, extension, and also to some policymakers. We rode on this, and we were able to then access extension services. And in the process, we were able to train 200 trainers who eventually reached out to 3,000 farmers in 4 provinces of Zimbabwe. So this was quite good. Then in the process, the message that we carried when we made an outreach to our farmers was to provide practical solutions to the farmers. We said, let's use the value chain approach. What the farmer wants at the end is to see a product. Yes, we can explain nicely about circular economy, but a farmer at the end wants to see what is coming out of it. So we were able also to produce technical briefs that were specific to different regions that the farmers were coming from. Another strategy that we also used was, on the other end, besides the smallholder farmers, there was also an interest from the entrepreneurs. Our entrepreneurs saw an opportunity because as a country, we have been facing a lot of import challenges. We could not import soya because of our national issues, but in the process, there was this opportunity that entrepreneurs also identified. So as an institution, we then decided to formulate insect-based food feed products. And in this slide, you can see we have come up with a fish feed formula, a rabbit feed formula, the road runners, which are the indigenous chickens, and also for the broilers. And in the process, we also formulated a fertilizer that is coming out from as a byproduct of black soldier fly production. This has been a hit with the local entrepreneurs in the cities. They have started to actually come for training, and we are also trademarking these formulas, and then they are able to develop business cases out of these activities. Just to end my presentation, what we've also done is we have developed a BSF model production facilities based on low-cost systems. Here we have adapted learning from the different farmer circumstances. We have actually developed systems that we think can be replicated in many parts of Zimbabwe, and in the process improve the viability of the interested farmers. I want to thank you for listening, and also thank AAP for allowing me to talk. Thank you. I take it back to the chairperson.
Thank you very much for highlighting the great work that you have been doing in Zimbabwe. Thank you so much. And thank you also for sticking to the time. Thank you, our audience, for engaging so actively. We can see your questions and comments coming in through the chat, and soon enough, we will be going to them. Last, but certainly not least, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Deborah Kibara, Director of Food Initiative at the Rockefeller Foundation. She's going to suggest us some future agenda items from the Rockefeller Foundation and other organizations that will lead us to practical solutions and interventions that will improve food and nutrition security through the use of insects. Thank you very much, Betty. Please, the floor is yours.
Yes, please. Can you allow me to share my screen? Thank you so much. Yes, my name is Betty Kibara. You can see my presentation.
Yes.
Hello. You can see my presentation. All right, that's fine. Yeah, my name, of course, is Betty Kibara, and I'm happy to have been invited to today's meeting. I want just to start. I know I have very few minutes, but I just want to. I love stories of my growing up, and I grew up in a village, and what brings a lot of memories to me was when we waited for the rainy seasons. As we waited for the rainy seasons, we looked forward to the rain for two reasons. One of it brought a good harvest, but the second one, as soon as an hour after the rains fell, we had these flying termites, and we used to actually boil them, fry them, and we could eat them as protein. So that was very interesting that today I'm here speaking about how to commercialize insect-based feed. So we've been having some work. As you know, the Rockefeller Foundation does quite a lot of work, also including work around advancing more nutritious foods, and in particular work around the insect-based feed that we have been working with in partnership with the ICIPE. So for today's meeting, I just have a few slides, and I hope that at the end of my presentation, I should be able to answer a question: is Africa ready for investment in insect-based feed? And I need to move to the next slide. Okay. All right, that's fine. Yeah, so I want to start by saying that, of course, we know the global protein demand. We have an increase of about 9% in the last 5 years. And we also know that even in countries like Kenya and East Africa, that demand is growing and is being driven by a couple of reasons, including population, urbanization, and increase in income. But we also know when we are talking about increase in demand for protein, and here protein, whether it's fish or it's chicken, the high cost of feed makes it a big challenge. And in some cases, we have seen the cost of feed in Australia, the protein component being about 70% of the total cost of production. And we also know, for example, sometimes we don't even have enough of those, the protein that we need, like the pelagic fish, and we have to import them from other countries. So the question then I have is Africa really ready for investment in insect-based feed? And my answer is yes, and I hope just highlight a couple of points. So one of the organizations, the International Center for Insect Physiology and Ecology, is based here in Africa, and they have done a lot of work then they have proven the science, and in support by many other organizations, including IDRC, including the Rockefeller Foundation. They have tested, whether it's substrates, whether it's formulation, for example, of insect-based feed, and in particular the black soldier fly. That's what I'm going to be focusing on. And so we've been having a partnership with them where we are looking at scaling up business models for insect-based feed. And we know that insect is a science. So any area where you're going to be working, and especially around insect, you need to work with a science-based organization, whether it is the ICIPE likes or it's the universities. So I think that's one point, that in Africa we have, solid institutions, and we have even seen it today during the presentations. And then the organic wastes, we have a lot of organic wastes in Kenya. In fact, just got some figures here that we generate about 8 million metric tons of organic waste. And we have an opportunity to change this waste and use it as gold. You can see on your right-hand side, there's a picture there of some of that waste. That waste can be used, converted into, production of black soldier fly larvae. And we know there are many other products, including the oil, the chitin, and the larvae itself, and the frass. And we do have, a number of companies, including one company known as Takataka that does sorts out the waste and is able to access that waste to a number of entrepreneurs. We also have a new initiative at the foundation, the Smart Markets of the Future, where we are trying to rethink, can we design the markets in a way that the component of, for example, waste is already private sector controlled, and they can now use the waste for insect-based feed. And then another compelling thing that I know is that we have a cohort of emerging and vibrant entrepreneurs. For example, in Kenya, I know we have maybe about 40 or thereabout SMEs, and about 2,000 farmers have actually received some form of training. And we also have seen many other entrepreneurs in Rwanda, in Uganda, Tanzania, and West Africa. And we do know, for example, in the report which was generated by the Alliance for Green Revolution about maybe about 2 years ago, that SMEs are actually the drivers of food systems transformation, and these are the hidden middle. So these vibrant entrepreneurs, they may not be at the growth stage. Most of them are at the very nascent stage, but there is an emerging vibrant of entrepreneurs. And then another point I want to bring in is the formation of insect association, insect-based feed association. For example, we know right now, a group of very vibrant entrepreneurs are already in the process of establishing association. And I just hope that this association is going to help drive standards. It's also going to help even make better policies for the insect-based feed work. And we hope that this can also be scaled to other countries in the region. Now, let's look at the comparative advantage. When we look at the pricing and the cost of production for example, the black soldier fly in Kenya, it's about roughly we can sell at 1 shilling. I think we will have broken even, or not 1 shilling, but $1 you have broken even. So we see there is a lot of comparative advantage on pricing, and also competitive advantage compared to many other countries. And we have also seen, for example, we have just commissioned some work with the Dalberg team that has shown that you can reduce the protein costs by about 25% to 37% by use of the insect-based feed. Now, question of willingness to pay. Willingness use and willingness to pay. I think ICIPE has also done quite a lot of baseline studies, and we know, for example, over 80% of fish and poultry farmers and 75% of traders are actually willing to use insect-based feed. So overall, there is an emerging acceptability by many businesses, many millers. I think the question we still have is issues of making sure that the consistency and the quality are adhered to. And then we have also seen over time favorable policy environment. For example, the Kenya Bureau of Standards has now set some guidelines on production and processing of insect-based feed. And so far, I'm aware that a good number of companies are already receiving certification. I think as last week, there were just a couple of them. And then other comments, like in Rwanda, they are working on their strategy, and they have also given some very good favorable tax moratorium for anyone who wants to go and invest in BSF in Rwanda. I do believe there is going to be favorable environment. We are also seeing some emerging financial products and accelerated programs for the same. So quite a bit of progress has been made. The Rockefeller Foundation also, in partnership with Dalberg, we have also done some work around looking at different business models for scaling up. We have done financial modeling for a number of them, including the smallholder farmer model, the community-based and outgrower, and an integrated model, all ranging from about $1,200 to $1.3 million, and perhaps a little bit more. And we have a report which is coming up. I know we have said it was going to be launched. It's taken a little bit long, but it's going to be soon public, maybe before the end of the year. So just look up at that. And so as I finish, what are some of those then opportunities? We know, for example, a number of SMEs are looking for investment opportunities. They're looking for blended capital. Some of them, of course, grant funds to really ignite their businesses. Some of them have business plans in place, and a couple of them have also struck some partnership with investors. Then we also need to continue, while many of them have learned, they have made mistakes, they have perfected the art, there is need for continuous technical assistance on different components of the insect, insect-based feed, the black soldier fly, whether these are going to be in terms of packaging, marketing, feed formulation and all that. We are still not there. We still need quite a bit of technical assistance. But we've also seen opportunities. For example, the county governments are reaching out to us, telling us that they're generating a lot of waste and they are looking for opportunities for co-investment. And the substrate is there. I mean, quite a bit of substrates. Now, the other place where we see opportunities is around post-harvest loss. I know the first speaker did mention about the issues of post-harvest losses, because many of these entrepreneurs don't even have a basic dryer. I think so far in Kenya, there could be less than 3 or 4 of them. And we do believe there are opportunities, for example, to try business models about a community dryer or a standalone company that just does drying. And I'm not saying that you should not dry your own, they should not dry their own larvae. They can do it, but we can also test different models. So I think the issue of many of them are just selling their waste as wet, I mean, the larvae as wet larvae, which they can make more money if it's dried. So we are looking for opportunities, such opportunities as maybe helping and supporting community drying facilities. And then of course, we've seen increased acceptance of the black soldier fly in particular. The feed companies are really asking for larger volumes. At the moment, the small and those small organizations, the small and medium scale enterprises are not able to supply all that is required. So we believe there is a lot of opportunities for, and for me, the BSF is, I do believe, is the next frontier in development, and especially around the livestock development. It's been quite exciting time for the Rockefeller Foundation, and we're going to be increasing our support, and especially in Rwanda and Uganda, as we expand some of the learnings that we have had in Kenya. But so far, very exciting opportunity, and I am convinced that we are on the right path for growth and investment in the continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Betty, for that very exciting presentation as well. It's great to see that the development partners are also taking a keen interest in this area of insects for food and feed. It gives us great confidence. Once again, thank you very much for each and every one of our presenters and panelists. You've done us really well. And now we're going to open up the floor for discussion. We have quite a number of questions and comments, and we are going to kick into the discussion on that. Please, if you still have them, go with this. In the questions, there are quite a bit of facts and figures of what we so far know about the cost and cost effectiveness of BSF production. Maybe I will bring this your way to start us. If I find the cost of BSFL enormous in South Africa, around 800 per kilogram, is that the experience in Kenya as well? I think there may be an economy of scale at this stage, he says. Also, a related question to what you have presented, Betty, says insect farming, especially maggots, I think that is the BSFL, are trending as the best alternative source of proteins for livestock and piggery and poultry feeds. Is there any plan in the near future to train more farmers? I know that you have touched on both of them, but maybe you can give us a summary on that, Betty.
Yeah, so, okay, I don't want to comment so much about the high cost of maggots this is in South Africa but in Kenya, our experience has been the cost of production would be maybe between 50 cents of a dollar, maybe to 70 cents of a dollar. That means the entrepreneurs are able to sell comfortably at $1 or $1.20. So we have found it very, very competitive in Kenya. And then the second question around the planning for training more farmers, I think I've just said the Rockefeller Foundation is expanding the work in Rwanda and Uganda. We may not do too much work in Kenya. We've been here for the last 3 years, but we want to expand the work in the rest of Africa. But I know, for example, ICIPE is represented on this call, and I know they're also having some additional trainings which are offered by other funders. So I think anyone who may want to get training, you can also reach out to Dr. Tanga. And one of the things we're also doing for this phase of work with the Rockefeller Foundation funding, we want to also have a portal where we can put a repository for all the materials that are going to be used and which are going to be relevant, so that we don't necessarily need to keep training, but we can have a portal that just provides some basic information on different aspects of the insect-based feed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Betty, for those responses. Next, I'll go to Deborah. We had appropriate, given that, Deborah, you're coming from both academia and the practitioner side of the insect business. So Mubangisi says, are there any efforts to mainstream education about insects as food in our current curriculum, given their great potential to enhance food security and also to contribute to solving climate change problems? And another one, you have compliments, Deborah, for your presentation, but Wilson would like to learn more about the acceptability of BSFL larvae in animal feed in Uganda, and to learn if there could be any challenges producing larvae in the different seasons. The acceptability of BSFL in animal feed, and any challenges, and if they vary across seasons. Deborah?
Thank you. Yeah, to answer the first question of curriculum mainstreaming, can you hear me? The first question of curriculum mainstreaming.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but my internet is breaking. Sorry.
We can hear you, Deborah.
Yeah. So to answer the first question of curriculum mainstreaming, yeah, I don't want to preempt much, but I have my colleague here, Dr. Claire Mugas. At least I can speak for Makerere. There is already dialogue which is going through mainstreaming productive insects to refocus them towards, maybe we start with graduate level and also plan for retooling of extension agents, but develop a program to refocus them towards productive insect technology. Because what is currently catered for in entomology is more geared towards conservation. And maybe I can throw it to this house where there are even all other partners and see if where we can, there's really opportunity to even have nowadays a blended learning model of Africa so that we can synchronize the training for practical productive entomology. So maybe at graduate level and then have skills packages. So there's an opportunity there to mainstream either the current courses or develop a new master's regional program for productive insects And I think for me, I would prefer it to be like blended with many trainers and probably hands-on and shared. On the other, acceptability, yeah, in Uganda, there's a lot of acceptability, at least as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of willing people and there's a lot of acceptability. They have a lot of questions that we can answer as scientists and producers, because in our unit, for example, when you are selling, they are willing to buy the fresh and dry. And I find Ugandans preferring the dried one because most of the farmers that are having a high pressure for feed formulation are commercial poultry farmers who are in large stocks of 100,000 to something above that, and whereby the farmer is using protein of around 600 kilograms a day or a ton a day, and they formulate their own feeds. So, but they come with a lot of questions. What is the composition? What are the risks? Will it stop my egg production? And we don't have those answers at the moment. So in our unit, we have retreated to promote it first for local poultry and local piggery as we build a knowledge base for commercial farmers. But there's a lot of interest with that group. Yes, the willingness is there. On the acceptability at adoption, there's also high demand for adoption, but the fallout rate is high because someone who will train this week, go start up next month, in 3 months, they face challenges, they drop off. So clearly there is high demand to kind of like have extension agents or support systems among themselves that help them also sustain the businesses. Because when you bring aspects of maintaining parent stock or aspects of formulating, manipulating organic waste to produce a stable protein content, because there are issues of variability of protein in the BSF. I don't know whether I'm mixing very many issues, but those are the real issues on ground. So I think those are my answers for now.
Thank you very much, Betty. Unfortunately, we are quickly running out of time, but let me quickly go to Jen. Ramesh wants to know if any FAO or have explored the environmental and also effects for food are being integrated into respective countries' food analysis tables. Yeah, Jen, would you like to have a go at those two, please?
So, Dorothy, sorry, I missed the first part of the question with the FAO, the internet. It was a little tricky.
The question is whether the international agencies like Food and Agriculture Organization have explored or any research exists on the environmental and ecological impacts of exploiting insects as food or feed, and what the parameter of sustainable insect exploitation could be.
Right. So I know that there's a lot of research that has gone into those particular components, especially evolved about the environmental aspects and the sustainability aspects. However, it's a constantly moving field of knowledge. And so those organizations, there have been a lot of big pushes for using insects as feed that started back in even 2006. And they've progressed a lot since then. And there's been a lot of different research that's been included since that time. And we continue to see progress in it. I don't have a specific answer to like where those resources are. You would have to look at the individual websites. There's not one collective insects as food and feed kind of agency that's taking over everything at the moment that I'm aware of, but perhaps some of the other panelists may have another thought about that particular topic. And then for the second question, again, there's just it's an ongoing process. So for us, it's not, I can't direct you to one particular target, especially because there's so many regional differences, so many country differences, and also kind of where the research is being taken place, if it's private industry versus whether it's academic or if it's something like an NGO. Sorry, I can't provide more explicit details.
Thank you, Jen. Does anybody else have information on that? Robert, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I I don't have much to say. What I can say is probably this is ongoing work, and it's a gap that needs to be covered, and through additional research and data collection.
Yeah, I can chime in. I can chime in. Part of the report which we'll be sharing, which will be released maybe later in the year, we have tried not to add a big detail, but we have tried to look at environmental, gender, economic, and nutrition benefits. We've calculated for X number of BSF capacity, how much, for example, water, not water, but carbon emissions you're saving, the impact on gender and economic analysis and nutrition benefits. So part of that has been done, but that's just for Kenya, it's just one country.
Yeah, thank you, Betty. I would like to, we have actually run 10 minutes over our time. I would like to inquire from, maybe I would like to take it back to Professor Minde to guide us on how to proceed. The questions are many. We also had several comments, commending and also confirming some of the presentations, the information that has been given in the presentations. But I am acutely aware that we have run out of time. Professor Minde or Justin,
yeah,
please. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I thought we are ahead of time. Justine, when were we expected to stop?
Yeah, we still have about another 20 minutes. We wrap at 9:30.
That's correct. So please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Feel very comfortable, Madam.
Thank you. Somehow I've also lost the ability to restart my video. If you'd like to, please enable me again. Thank you. We had quite a number of questions around legislation. I know that Betty has mentioned some of what is going on, and also Deborah on the EU level. I don't know if we have some additional information, complementing information on that topic, particular topic, Jen, from the North American perspective.
From the North American perspective, insects have been approved for feed for very specific targeted animals. So things like salmonids, and also we're starting to get approval for poultry, which is amusing because we all think about insects just eating insects naturally, but of course we have to go through the regulations and legislation to approve of it. And as of right now, again, this request for information through USAID and the USDA is something that's really critically important. And it's showing promise that the US government is thinking about expanding how global insect production is going to impact insects as food and feed, in my opinion. So for us, it's again been a long process and it's still ongoing, and I hope to see it expanded in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We've also had comments saying that insect foods need to be made to look cool, so as to increase acceptability. But also there was a question about, the perception. The first question was about the perception of use of insects in feed, but also maybe we can hear some experiences from Zimbabwe. Robert, you've done a lot of work around that and it is encouraging, but you also have some sections of society that traditional eaters that on commercialization of insects for food. Robert?
Okay, thank you. I kind of lost you for the last part of the question, but I think I got the idea about the question. I will try to respond. Let me start by insects as feed. The perceptions here, what the message that we have put across here is animals, especially chickens, they naturally feed on maggots in the environment. And this is a notion that most of our targeted participants have accepted. They have seen it in reality. It has not been a very difficult thing to persuade farmers to get into black soldier fly farming, for example. I want to say also at national level, we have no problems with regulations at the moment, because the government is still also buying into this philosophy that insects are used, chickens and other small domestic animals are used to consuming insects in the natural system. But I know a few years to come, we will still need to go down the route of standards and food safety. But at the moment, we are enjoying this relaxation in terms of government legal systems. When it comes to food.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Robert.
Okay, thank you.
Please go ahead. Go ahead, Robert.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dorothy. When it comes to food, yes, we have traditional consumers that we have no problems in terms of attitude. However, we have religious, there are some religious sects that also considers this as a taboo or something not allowed in their religious circles. So this is one area that we have had to deal with when it comes to insects for food. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. We have a specific one for Betty. Samuel is asking, are we thinking of extinction of insects, which are so vital for other forms of agriculture, that humans themselves will be extinct in absence of insects? So yeah, the question, Betty, is whether extinction is a real threat, given that insects have other functions. And I would also like to add this, since you're, yeah, we've had a recent problem of locusts in Eastern Africa, and somebody is asking, why are locusts mostly seen as a problem and are not an opportunity? So those two, Betty, if you would.
I'm not sure whether I want to answer the question on extinct, but I do know, for example, for the black soldier fly, we are trying to, you know, rear it in-house. And I also know there has been challenges. I have seen the question, I don't know whether it's the same question around the pesticides. I think we have to continue encouraging better use of pesticides and herbicides so that we don't do away and we do more harm to our insects. And then the second question on locusts, I do know it's a very good opportunity, and I know ICIPE has been, you know, doing some studies around how we can harness and harvest the locusts so that they can be used for food and also for feed. Yeah, so I think those are the comments I can provide for now.
Okay, thank you, Betty. I don't know, so there is a question here. Maybe let me put it to Deborah. One of our audience would like to get information about feed suitable for rearing BSFL larvae, specifically for human consumption. Is chicken feed the best option? Deborah, I don't know if you have any experience rearing BSF for human consumption, and whether that, you know, you have any comments around suitable feed for that. And maybe, given that you're from the Department of Veterinary Medicine, maybe let me also add this. There's also a concern about whether there are any known diseases or viruses that wild edible insects can transmit to those who harvest them. Deborah? Ladies and gentlemen, I've had to turn off my video because I'm reliably informed that from your side, my internet is unstable. So I hope that has helped a little bit. Do we still have Deborah on the call?
But the internet was disturbing. I didn't hear the question. Sorry.
Okay, the question was, somebody wanted to know if you have any feed that you would recommend for rearing BSF larvae for human consumption. I don't know if you are aware of any use of BSF for human consumption, but also whether there are any concerns of pathogens being transmitted from the insects to either harvesters or consumers.
Okay, thank you for that question. One, of course, there are still a lot of safety issues in terms of raising BSF for human consumption. So you will have to think carefully on the type of rearing material or substrate, what we call. So you will have to quality assure that substrate, because there is already growing literature that this BSF larvae can pick up some heavy metal biochemical contamination, and they can also carry some of the known food pathogens like the Campylobacter, Listeria, Ecology, if not well catered for. As to whether there is known evidence that they can transmit diseases to the persons taking care of them, no. At the moment, there is no documentation and there is no direct threat to the person catering for. So it is mainly being geared towards the direction of livestock feed, and we believe through management of the waste material for rearing it, one can easily minimize the microbial contamination, either through pre-processing of the organic waste or proper processing of and handling of the larvae before giving to the livestock. So, like giving my experience from Uganda, most of the organic waste we collect from markets, we collect from restaurants, but sometimes they don't know how to collect it nicely or separate it like it would be in the Western world. So you find saloon hair chemicals in them, you find a mixture of other items. We found razor blades and needles from saloon in some of the organic waste. So those are the physical hazards that we might at least tell the workers to look out for, because people just mix everything in the dustbin. So we have retreated kind of in the neighborhood, I would call it a neighborhood garbage collection model, where you go sensitize door to door your neighbors and tell them, look here, I want your waste. I will be giving you some smaller 100 shillings for a kilogram. If you make 40 kilograms, you have 5,000, and I will send someone to collect it from your house, but please don't throw in the cavera, don't throw it. So such things. So at the moment, yes, that's what I would say for that. I don't know whether I've answered it very well for the person. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Deborah, for that response. Maybe I'm also going to read a comment or two. Modou says, let's remember that food has a psychological, social, and cultural connotation. What is considered food in one country is not considered as food in another country. Hope that we take that into consideration when we recommend certain sources like insects. Okay, thank you for that comment. There is another one here from Betty on the question of building interest. There is a company that is testing the use of crunchy crickets as a snack for kids, and the kids are excited about the product. There is a need to make the product cool for consumption, and I believe that one of the entrepreneurs doing this is in the house. So those two comments sort of speak to each other. Yes, there is the psychological, social, cultural connotations, and we have experienced them. And I think anybody that has tried to do insects for food and feed research in a non-insect traditional consuming culture would attest to that. But there is one of the solutions, you know, to make it cool and attractive. I don't know if that has been your experience. In fact, Robert shared that has been their experience by involving shapes and coming up with recipe book has helped quite a lot. Okay, somebody had a question here about the ratios of insects that can be used in poultry feeds. I know it is a broad one, but let me ask Deborah, because again, you're from the vet department, but any other panelists who would like to come in on that could please come in on that question. So the utilization of, I guess, BSFL in animal feeds. A small-scale farmer who is rearing, or a non-veterinarian, a non-animal nutritionist, what would you advise on the levels of incorporation?
Thank you. I will try. For now, what we are doing is it depends on the crude protein content and the species of the animal the farmer is rearing. For example, if they are dealing with local poultry, so there are already existing food formulas for fish and fish meal and the soybean. So if, for example, depending on the organic waste one has reared, it's a matter of replacing the same volume if the crude protein for BSF comes like at 45, 50, and then you go through the calculation to fit the same animal. So at the moment, I wouldn't fix particular figures, but what we do at our section, we tailor make the formulation based on the type of species of the animal, the type of flock, and the stage, because as you realize, even pigs, there's starter diet, there's the medial diet, even poultry, there is also starter diet, and for layers, they also have a different version. So I know that farmer, she's a Ugandan who has asked that question. Maybe off this, I will try to give her a call. And we are trying to work out a simplified booklet also, because it's a typical question that farmers ask. And issues, we don't have capacity to defat, to remove fat, excess fat right now from the BSF larvae. It's a challenge or a key problem for people who want to use the larvae for fattening their pigs. They don't want a lot of fat content. So those are areas we are thinking, okay, how can we extract fat also from the larvae? So I don't have a focused answer at the moment.
Can I chime in? Although I'm not a scientist, I'm aware also ICIPE has done a lot of work on feed formulation. They have done work showing what happens when you replace 25% of the feed with BSF. They have done 50%, 75%, and 100%. And I'm happy to share with you, Deborah, after this call, their published reports on what ratios are the best. Yeah.
Thank you, Deborah and Betty. And Betty, while you're on the floor, I have one here for you specifically. Kingsley thanks you for the presentation, but would like to know if Rockefeller Foundation provides grants to individual researchers on insect research, especially as food for humans.
Oh, sorry. So can I chime in? I know, for example, there is one company, I do believe in South Africa. I think it's called, it has a product called Ento Milk. They're already using the larvae from the black soldier flies for the dairy-free milk, which is said to be very high in lactose and gluten and sugar-free. I think that's really quite interesting that there are some people who are already trying to make use of that. But I know when it comes to BSF, I find more use, I think, so far done for the feed. But I think where I'm seeing increase in interest, and especially in Kenya, is the crickets for feed. I mean, for food. We are seeing emerging entrepreneurs who are now working towards crickets for use of for insects for food. Yeah, that's quite interesting.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Maybe Dorothy, can I come in?
Sure, Robert.
Yeah, just regarding the suitable substrate for use, our philosophy we have used, whether it's for food or for feed, we say what is good for us as humans should be good for the insects and should be good for the animals that we intend to feed on. So just to support what Deborah has already said, the idea there is to manage the substrate that we use for production of these insects. We want to make sure that we have as good, what is good for us should be good for the insects. And I'm sure if we follow it up, we will not have issues with safety and any other issues. It's something that needs to be refined in terms of where the waste is collected, but it's a gap that all of us should address in terms of the procurement of the waste and the substrate. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
May I follow up on one thing related to that? So there's been a lot of conversation about pathogen transmission for black soldier flies in particular. And we know that organic wastes have a lot of microbial communities that can be pathogenic. However, the body of work as of right now demonstrates that black soldier fly does not transmit human pathogens or animal pathogens. They actually can suppress some of those pathogenic and potential pathogen loads. And so it's unique to black soldier fly. This does not apply to all insect species. Things like house flies, on the other hand, are very good at transmitting pathogens. So it's going to be species specific, but at least in terms of black soldier fly, there is a lot of information that demonstrates they're not transmitting diseases, and that actually the waste production that you start with, it doesn't influence the output of the insects that's produced, and it doesn't influence at least their pathogen and their microbial loads. Thank you.
And just to add to Jennifer, of course, the BSF, for example, the black soldier fly doesn't have a mouth, so it's not really a dangerous insect to have out there. And then the other thing I've seen the entrepreneurs doing is to steam the larvae in hot water just before they take it for drying. So in case there were any pathogen, then it's no longer contaminated. So they go through some processing and treatment.
Very true indeed, Betty. And that is part of the very important research that is ongoing to make sure that we develop protocols that can ensure the safety of the insect meal or the insect products that we put out either for animal feed or human consumption. Thank you very much for that very lively discussion and exchange. I think this time we actually ran out of time. So I would like to thank you very much, our presenters, our discussants, our audience for that very passionate engagement, very informative discussions. And I'm sure that we have all gained out of this. We have also made contact with each other. And I believe the organizers will make an effort to keep us together and discussing. Thank you very much to the organizers as well. And at this point, I hand back to the organizers.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, for orchestrating this session. And it has run so well. Thank you again. Thank you to all panelists for really speaking out of the box and making our dialogue so lively. And I think you can see that we could even have 1 more hour and we wouldn't be tired. Thank you very much. I would also like to thank all the participants for your remarks, observations, questions, which
It looks like our colleague Isaac Minde is having some challenges with his internet. So I will step in. This is Jose Jackson, the co-director for the AAP, and we are very excited that the conversation went this well this morning. Thank you to all the panelists, and thank you, colleagues in the audience, for listening in and asking really great questions. So this concludes our dialogue series for 2021. We thank you all for the full year of discussions that we've had, ranging from COVID vaccines and inequities, and we've had discussions around gender and youth, and now we're ending on what is a great topic, insects and insect feed, for feed and food. And we hope that the panelists will engage further beyond this. We're going to get you guys back together, get in all of the sessions. We try to keep the panelists together, and we try to do work together, and we will continue this for sure. So please look out for us again for the next series in the AAP Public Dialogues. We start back again in February 2022. Look forward to seeing you all. Thank you so much.